Devon, you made this?
Hey, welcome to Fentanyl Facts and Stories. I'm Charlie Perry, along with my host, Paula Santos-Young. And today's guest is Colin Cage. This man is definitely doing some amazing things, and I only did some research today, and I'm very impressed. So I can't wait to hear his story, his his brainstorming behind his company called OFAX, and I can't wait. So, Paula, thank you for inviting this amazing guest. And what are we going to do? We're going to have you, Paula. You want to intro? You want to
Yes.
give? Go ahead.
So I was introduced to Colin by someone who's very familiar to many people, James Carroll. James Carroll was the former drug czar of the United States. And Colin has actually come here to Massachusetts for an event that Achieve Greatness had in Springfield. And then he was at Gillette Stadium. And we believe kind of a lot of the same things. And we have partnered together. So I asked him if he would be on the podcast to tell everyone about his story and what he's doing and how he became a CEO of the company that he is with today, that he co-founded, and why he's doing this. And as all of you are going to listen, you're going to hear that some of it has to do with fentanyl, is what we talk about every week when we bring amazing guests on. So, Colin, I'm going to give it to you. Please tell your story. Let the listeners hear, because we have a lot of listeners. Say whatever you feel like saying. Please feel free to be comfortable. Sometimes we do get questions in the comments, and we'll let you know what they are. But I appreciate you being on, and thank you for being part of this.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. When you say be comfortable, I got to watch myself. I don't want to get too comfortable. But anyway, so thanks for the intro. I appreciate you guys. Really, for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been focused on innovative treatments for overdose, poisonings, and addiction. It's taken a few different shapes, but it's all kind of started from my prior life, where I was focused on investing in a lot of early stage companies, researching, diligencing early stage companies. And along the way, unfortunately, I lost 2 close friends to me, childhood friends that I grew up with. And it just kind of struck me that there's probably something more important than ROI that I should be focusing on. And so I flipped the script a bit and went in-house working for a company that was very focused on combating addiction with an innovative therapeutic. Ultimately didn't go the distance, but was also kind of the spark for what OVAX is today, because that led me to want to continue pursuing that mission. And it also led me to understanding kind of the whole research landscape, the whole addiction and poisoning and overdose landscape, to realize that it's a bit broken, to say the least. The paradigm right now is focused on reactionary treatments, where, in my opinion, at least in my views, the best form of treatment is preventing the illness altogether, preventing the event altogether from happening in the first place. And if you look at other, sorry for the rant here, but if you look at other epidemics that we've experienced as a nation, think about Ebola, think about biothreats like anthrax even, you realize that each of those, even COVID, not a lot of people want to talk about COVID, but each of those has been ultimately combated by preventative therapeutics. So I'm lucky enough to have co-founded OVAX with some really amazing people, some really fascinating researchers who have been working on this for a long time now. And they've developed 2 vaccine compositions initially that have shown very robust efficacy against completely preventing overdose, preventing poisonings from ever occurring, which is super, super interesting. This has all been tested in animals to date, but our job as a company is to cross the valley of death, as they call it, in drug development, and start to translate that data into humans, and really get something, potentially an option available for people out there who could really use something like this. The 92% of the poisoning and overdose population who are accidental deaths. They are not seeking fentanyl, nor are they seeking overdose. So that's why I like, and Paula is very strong in this term as well, but using the term poisoning versus overdose. So very long-winded introduction, but thank you again for having me. And that's a bit on what we're working on.
Yeah, I want to first. I'm glad that you are focusing on this, because there's too many people that are unfocused and not. They have so many opportunities or so much capabilities to be a strong advocate advocate's the right word, for fentanyl and opioids, and they just don't do it. There's so many people in this city that I know that could be the most electrifying and most advocates for this drug or this pandemic, really, or really tragedy. It is. Fentanyl is a tragedy, and I think that they just refuse to, or they focus on things that are a little bit less essential to society. In my eyes, I just think that all these deaths that are going on throughout the whole world, and we seem to kind of put a blinded eye on it or blinded ear on it, and until it hits home. And all I guess in the past have always said that this is very similar to the crack epidemic, and people didn't start concentrating on it and start moving mountains until it affected home. And I just I'm just glad that somebody like you, who has the resources to kind of reach hundreds of people, thousands of people, maybe, and that's so important.
When you think about it, I mean, it's thank you for saying that, first of all. When you think about it, and it's millions, actually. I mean, there are millions and millions of people out there who are using drugs, or not even using drugs. I mean, you see fentanyl now in vape pens. Marijuana is legalized in a lot of places. It is in some ways, I think, on a medical basis in the state of Connecticut, for example. And you see people going about their life and kind of coming in contact with this stuff inadvertently, which freaks me out. And so the fear, I think the reason a lot of the folks with the potential to be advocates for the space and speak out on this are too cognizant of the stigma that's associated with this space. But at the end of the day, this is something that I'm personally scared of. I mean, anyone who I think has young children who are at higher than average risk of exposure, I'll put it that way. If you think about a teenager, you're very rebellious usually. I was, you're very vulnerable. You're kind of coming to the age, and a part of that process is experimenting a lot of times. And with that, nowadays, the drug supply is not what it was 10, 20 years ago. I mean, now the number seems to be changing, but the DEA has released data that it's anywhere from 5 to 7 pills that are laced with fentanyl. So if you think about a college student seeking out Adderall for, they're pulling an all-nighter for studying, and in that they have a 50 to 70% chance of overdosing on fentanyl. That's very scary if it's not prescribed. So I think we have to do a better job in terms of educating the public and parents, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, just everyone out there, to understanding the dangers that this is real and it can happen to anyone. It's not, doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. it's impacting everyone. So, I'm glad you're both on here with this podcast and supporting this effort too. Same could be said about both of you, obviously. And that, Paul, I've said that to you many times. So it's fantastic you're out doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Charlie, just to let you know, Colin is a retired police officer, 30 years here in the city. So he is very well versed in, the drug scene, unfortunately, because of being a police officer. Yep. So one of the things that we do a lot is we make sure that we let people, when Charlie and I got together to do this, he's doing this because of the loss of Andrew. But it has morphed into so much more than that. It's morphed into where people are saying, hey, I heard who you had on your podcast, and oh my gosh, that person was great. And this is what I learned. When we're bringing people on here, we're bringing people like you, we're bringing people, like Scott, which you met at Gillette Stadium. He was just on. The deputy fire chief. I'm bringing Andrea on. She's coming on in 2 weeks. I mean, I have, Jim Rawl, who's going to be coming on. So it's all about knowledge. It's all about really educating the public, because unfortunately we continue to have this, and I don't even know what it's called. I don't even think it's a vortex. It's almost like I'm living in a different reality sometimes on certain calls that I'm on with people, where the Twilight Zone, if I can relate to anything. And, I was on a call today with somebody, with a group of people, and they were they were combating me again about the whole marijuana and fentanyl. And I'm like, what is it you all don't understand? My God, there was a case in 2022, look it up on Google because it's free, of I think it was 29 or 30 cases. And Colin, because HIDA has come out, and the director of HIDA, who's high intensity drug trafficking unit in New England, they came out and they said, yeah, this is true. This really happened. Yes. And so did the medical examiner. And it's just, you keep having this persona of, because now, but it's legal. Yeah. Okay. We get that it's legal, but we're still telling you, don't go to the street.
Yeah.
Go to the dispensary. If anything, I mean, hey, I think the three of us, I just hit on something. Maybe we need to start hitting up dispensaries and doing something with them, sponsorship.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I'm sure if anyone, anyone out there, they'd have the interest in kind of partnering on that front, because it's giving them a bad name, obviously. And so, obviously, I don't want to harp too much on marijuana in general. It's very beneficial for a lot of people suffering. So I absolutely don't want to demonize it in general.
Right.
But correct. What I do want to demonize is illicit fentanyl. That is absolutely horrible. And it's coming back to that intent to use something that you don't think is actually there, which is scary in a lot of ways. And then you see, I don't know if you guys saw the CDC report recently, but I may not have the stat perfectly correct, but I think the amount of carfentanil, which is originally designed as an elephant tranquilizer, is up over 500% in the drug supply for the past year, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Yes. You have to fact check me on it. But it's a significant increase. And that, David DiGregorio at your event, Paul, was talking about it. That is not even, that's never intended for human consumption. Mm. And then you look at also the potential threat to people outside of those using drugs on a kind of chemical warfare basis, and it becomes a pretty scary place. He gave an example on Gillette Stadium. Paul, have you ever shared this example?
I don't think I have, because I'm actually looking to have David on.
Oh, so, great! All right, I'll leave it for him.
Yeah, so he can kind of speak on it. Kind of like he did at Gillette, because I think it's important to know. But I also want you to really touch upon, because you said that you had lost your two best friends, unfortunately, and this really kind of pivoted you to doing what you're doing. But let's be honest, someone like yourself, brilliant. And just so that everybody knows, Colin is working with doctors right here at Boston Medical, everyone. Please understand.
Boston Children's Hospital.
Yeah,
that's right.
And Boston Children's. So please understand that, Colin's not someone who is, in a different state, actually just Connecticut, and working with people who are out of the country. He's working with people right here in Boston. And as everybody knows, Boston is the number 2 or number 3 in the country for the best hospitals in the world.
Yep.
So why don't you talk on that, Colin, on the association you have with Boston Children's and the wonderful doctors that have partnered with you to say, you know what, we're going to stand with you. We have a problem, and this is how we're going to have a path to move this forward.
Yeah, so I can't give enough credit to them. Thank you for that segue. It's so Dr. David Dowling and Dr. Ofer Levy at Boston Children's Hospital, and then another shout out, a non-Bostonian, so bear with me here, but Dr. Colin Hale, I also have to give him credit where credit's due, out of the University of Houston. The three of them are really, in my mind, kind of helping me and the others on my team, my COO and my chief medical officer, to create the Manhattan Project against fentanyl. I mean, I think this takes some of the brightest minds in the country. Both of them are like I said, working at Boston Children's Hospital, which is important for us for a lot of reasons, but they're focused specifically on children. Obviously, it's in the name. They're both professors of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School as well, and so from that, we have this tremendous lens into how this issue is impacting young children, adolescents, teens, even young adults in college and such. And I want to step back a bit. So obviously I wanted to give them their credit as to what they're working on and the fascinating vaccine formulation that we can get into here. And I can kind of give ease to some of the anti-vaxxers out there, so to speak, or the people who are critical on vaccines, rightly so, coming out of COVID, by the way. I get it, believe me. But so we can get into that a bit as well. But I think it's important to take a step back and look at innovation in general in this space. At least from my perspective, there's not enough attention being shed on a lot of the academicians and researchers, professors, et cetera, who are doing fascinating work on new substances to make naloxone better and improve the half-life. Substances, like what we're working on, that could completely prevent overdose altogether, and squash this as an issue. So I mean, I'd encourage everyone out there just on education is a big part of this. Obviously, we need to educate more people, the better. But I'd encourage more people out there to take a look at some of the innovative new treatments, and if you can, support them as much as you can, whether that's by word of mouth, which is the most cost-effective way to do it, or donating to research. I highly encourage it. And we have a big database of people working on it. So if anyone needs to reach out, please let me know, and I'll help fill that void. But yeah, Paula, did I touch on the Boston connection?
You did, but I think also, just so that the listeners, because we have a whole bunch of listeners, and Charlie knows sometimes we've hit 1,000 people. You spoke about COVID, right? And you spoke about the vaccine. And yes, there are some folks out there, as we've experienced personally, who are and yeah, Charlie, I have to tell you that a different day. Okay, so would your project encourage more people to use fentanyl?
Yeah, it's such a good question. This is probably the number 3 question that we get. It's not about encouraging or not encouraging people to use fentanyl. First of all, I think the data shows that the majority of the population is not seeking fentanyl. Second to that, if the question is more so meant to say, is this encouraging drug use? In my opinion, no, absolutely not. It's not about that, and it's not about whether or not people are going to use drugs. It's when they're going to use drugs, sadly. And I think time has shown that. I think the statistics show that, unfortunately. In fact, drug use overall, if I'm not mistaken, has gone down over time. And when you look at drug use going down and overdose rates slowly starting, obviously going up over time and recently teetering off, luckily, and I hope that continues, but say that steadies out, that doesn't make any sense. If drug use is going down and overdose rates are going up, then there's a mismatch to that equation. So I'd say our product specifically is more of a protection. This is to give kind of a crude example. If you think about when you were in health class in middle school or high school even, and the teachers were handing out condoms and encouraging you to use protection, et cetera, if you are going to have sex. It's not if people are going to have sex, it's when. In my opinion, it's the same thing with drug use. It's people are going to unfortunately use drugs over time. People will experiment. It's whether or not they will have the option to be protected from that drug use in the event that they're seeking out one thing, innocent experimentation, and then all of a sudden they're on their back and they can't breathe anymore, or they're in the hospital for 10 days, like my friend, and ultimately their parents have to pull the plug. I don't want that for anyone, and I don't think anyone wants that for anyone who they love. So that's what we're focused on, just stopping altogether. It's very similar in my mind. This may be a bit traumatic, but in my mind, when you think about the anthrax scare, there were 5 people who were killed from the anthrax scare. And that's terrible, but it brought the nation to its knees a lot. Everyone knows anthrax. Everyone knows what that is and the potential for it as a biothreat. Now we're looking at 70 to 80,000 people every single year dying from fentanyl. So this is a big problem that we have no preventative countermeasure for. Whereas we relatively quickly developed a countermeasure for anthrax or Ebola or even COVID. There were mistakes made along the way with COVID, but we have the opportunity to learn from those. So we can talk a bit about that. But it's absolutely incredible to me that the chief concern is still, and this kind of goes back to the stigma. The chief concern is will this proliferate drug use? That's not it. It's will this protect my loved ones from when they do use drugs? And I hate to speak that reality as a parent. I never want to think about anyone, a parent, friend, etc., anyone using drugs, in illicit drugs in a bad way.
Right.
But they shouldn't be punished by death. I mean, that's I think never.
Colin, do you see the question? The other question is, how would this roll out, and would this be provided in rehab facilities, or would this be for everyone to use so that no one is exposed? And by the way, I appreciate what you're doing. So is this just for everyone, or is it targeted? And by the way, Colin, that's my husband.
Oh, hey, Phil, I'm slightly intimidated by you. I've heard you're a really large human, so I'm not. I'm very medium sized. But so yeah, it's a good question. If you can keep it up on the screen, that'd be great. I want to hit every part of it because it's really important. So first of all, we want to make this as affordable and accessible to everyone. I recognize that, and if you look into the data, overdose rates in general recently have come down, but in minorities, Native Americans, Blacks, Hispanics, et cetera, they've continuously gone up. That's a problem. That's the same mismatch that we experience all across society. So I want to make sure that anyone, in a lesser socioeconomic status can have access to this first and foremost. I think we've seen a lot of issues with drug pricing in the past overall as pharmaceutical companies. We're small right now. We're a very small, humble company, by the way. So we don't have to worry about this yet, but it is top of mind. You've seen a lot of issues with drug companies coming out with these treatments that are insanely expensive, and often the people who need them most can't make sure to access them. So the rollout for us will be very important from a pricing, from an insurance, from a reimbursement perspective, first of all. And then second to that, who are we actually, who is the patient population here? It's hard to think about anyone who should not be the patient population here. I mean, fentanyl is the number 1 killer of anyone aged 18 to 45. You think about that stat, and it's pretty jarring. I think that stat was run several years ago, actually, by Jim Rao, Paul, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Either that or James Carroll, like you mentioned. I think he might have pioneered that during his time at ONDCP, but one of the two of them. I want to give credit where credit's due. That is incredible to me. So it's a massive patient population. We would want this to be available for anyone who thinks in that patient population that it's needed. It's an option at the end of the day. It's a risk benefit assessment that I think that population, 18 to 45, but also you think about 11 to 18 when children, adolescents, teens, et cetera, start experimenting with drugs, I also want this to have, be available as an option for parents who on an annual basis make the risk benefit assessment of, do I give my kid the flu vaccine? This is kind of the same thing in my mind. Is Danny just hypothetical name, is Danny starting to behave different? Is he, are his friends that he's hanging out with, is it a different crowd? Well, maybe there's always kind of a gradual path into going down the route of either addiction or being poisoned or overdosing, et cetera. Sometimes there's not. And that also is why this vaccine is needed, in my opinion. But you usually can start to tell the signs. And in that scenario, I'd like to have the parents who are starting to get scared and fearful and looking for options be able to say, reach out to their physician or offered by their physician, hey, this is available if you want it, if you need it. And one important point, and then I'll stop ranting here, but one important point is we can get into how this actually works, first of all, because that's probably important. But the vaccine also has the potential to stop addiction, not just poisonings and overdose. But this vaccine basically sequesters the fentanyl molecule in the bloodstream, preventing it from reaching your brain. And if fentanyl doesn't reach your brain, you don't get the euphoric effect, which is the high effect that most people seek out. And you more importantly don't get the side effects such as respiratory depression, which ultimately leads to overdose. So in point there, Phil, it was a great question. I want this available for everyone who thinks that it is needed or potentially needed, because right now I think people are desperately looking for options, and I love available options. Narcan, naloxone, et cetera, are fantastic products. I think they are making a difference. I think more people should have more access to them. But I think there's definitely room for improvement. I think there's a different way to go about this, as there usually is. So yeah, that's my answer. I hope I hit it all.
Yeah. I just want to mention that on YouTube, Michael Sameo, he said he's listening to us like he always is, and this kind of goes right up his alley. He's someone that's always stressing and sending me facts about COVID, the pandemic, and he's always looking at the point where it's going to rebound and it's going to catch everybody off guard, and how we don't pay attention, we're getting so lax again. And so I just want to let him know out there that thank you, Michael, for all the input that you do give me, and also that this is right up his alley, especially with Colin here talking about what he's doing and his foundation. I guarantee you, at some point during this podcast, Michael had already looked up your company. He's already going into different things, and he's going to give me a great response later. But I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that he's there on YouTube, and some of the things he's saying, it may seem like it's going on deaf ears, but I just want to let you know, Michael, that see, Colin's doing his thing, and he's really, really being a strong advocate. And I just want to let you know that I do appreciate what you do for me every day, because you are teaching me, just like we're trying to teach people in the audience about fentanyl and its dangers. Michael, thank you. That's all. Sorry, I didn't want to go on that rant, but it's very important that I acknowledge him, only because some of the things you just said, he tells me on a daily basis. So it's real, real important.
That's great.
I think one of the biggest things we definitely need to touch on, because Scott had brought this up when we had him on, and you talked about the CDC, and and just for people to understand, yes, the CDC came out to say that overdoses are down. The problem is, what they're not saying is that, yes, overdoses are down because people are now carrying Narcan and they're there to help. But what they're not telling you is that the fatal overdoses are actually continuing to rise. And that's where we continue to have that misconception, because when Scott was on, he talked about that. And he said that's the biggest thing that they fight with all the time, is when these things come out and they're unfortunately not all factual as we would like them to be. So we make sure that when we do things, Colin, this, that we are factually based, and we have people like you on to let folks know, okay, we understand what you're hearing, but here's what the truth is. Because, you have to protect yourself. Fentanyl is in everything. And yes, it was actually Jim Rawl from Families Against Fentanyl, who we're also going to be having on, who came up with the, fentanyl is the number one killer across the United States of 18 to 45. So yes, and all kudos to him, because, he has a team that also looks into all of these stats and makes sure to put out the correct information. And it's interesting because the CDC called him and asked them if they could use that tagline. So for them to come out and now say, oh, well, hey, guess what? The overdoses are coming down. We're not saying that is not a good thing. Please understand. But what we are saying is, please understand the facts also.
Yeah, you just want to kind of add, well, the best thing for them to do is to add some more facts to what they're saying. It instead of just being that one pitch wonder, throw several pitches in the direction of the batter or the public, or give them a couple of more facts to it. And although they want to say that the drug use is down, the fatality is up. There's gotta be, you don't want to kind of tell the kid, it's raining outside, but the rain's going to come away. It just, let me stop right there before I end up going on this rant and all this rhetoric. I just think that government agencies just throw out what they want to. There's a very small, when you do surveys, there's a small audience that you're focusing on. 200 people in Massachusetts doesn't represent Massachusetts. It's so important that that when we get all these stats that we read on the bottom line, this is based on 1,000 people,
right?
And I want people to understand that that's not good. If it was several thousand, maybe even 1 million people, based on 1 million people that committed to this survey, we have a uptick on overdoses, or that's real important that we do it that way. People read opinions and stats, and they think that's, wow, I can't believe it. Massachusetts voted this way, and it's only 1,000 people, So, sorry.
No, that's okay. Colin, why don't you talk about the research that you've been doing? Because I know it's been quite some time, that the research, and where you are, and when is this possibly going to be really put out to the masses, and who are you going to start using first for the vaccine?
Yeah, so this is certainly not some overnight success. We've been, by we, I mean my co-founders that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Levy and Dr. Dowling and Dr. Hale, have been working on these vaccine formulations really since 2017, 2018, roughly. And before that, there had been many formulations developed previously. We're actually learning from a long line of people who have been doing this. So a few of them that have really pioneered the industry: Dr. Kim Jonda, if everyone wants to look him up. Dr. Tom Costin is another great one. I'd encourage you to look up. Anyway, these vaccines have been in formulations for decades. The issue has been, and this is largely a parallel to what we see now. Everyone might as well touch on it because everyone talks about it seems, but everyone seems to be focused on AI and machine learning and the rise of that. But this is not the first time. This is not like, AI and ML is extremely innovative. This is not the first time this has happened in history. I mean, in the early 90s, even in the 80s, there were AI and ML. There was kind of a gold rush in a lot of ways. The reason it didn't take off is because the compute power couldn't support it. So that's as far as I'll go on that. I'm not going to bore you all any more on that. In that same vein, it's the same reason why these vaccines didn't work in the past. We didn't have the methodology to have these vaccines elicit a robust immune response to the point where they were effective. So now we're at this point after decades and decades of research on these different vaccine formulations. Really in the past 5 or 6 years, we've now started to see them work extremely well, at least in humans at least in animals, not humans. Yeah, we hope humans, but we've basically seen these vaccines tested, and our vaccines or other vaccines in formulation right now, tested in all types of animals. So mouses, rats, pigs, rabbits, even. So it's kind of run the gamut, and they seem to be extremely effective. And each vaccine formulation is really composed of its three components, and that's as deep as I'll go here. But you have an adjuvant, you have an antigen, and then you have a carrier molecule, and those three components are obviously critical to the success of this. But the rise in adjuvant technology, and specifically what we're seeing at the Precision Vaccines program at Boston Children's Hospital, specifically, Dr. Ofer Levy and Dr. David Dowling are leading the charge in innovating adjuvant technology. And these adjuvants are kind of like the rocket fuel that provide your body with the boost that it needs to have the antibody response that can battle these illicit substances as opposed to battling a virus. So it's the same thing that you'd see in a flu vaccine, but instead of attacking that flu, it's attacking the fentanyl in the bloodstream. So where are we, or how are we going to roll this out initially? We want to initially have this available, I think, in the next 4 or so years. I do have to say that can vary. I mean, that could be significantly longer. There are opportunities where it could be shorter. It depends, how much we can kind of work alongside our own government, frankly, and have the opportunities to really prioritize this and get this available to those in need. And we want to have this available for a few populations to start. We want to have this available for people suffering from opioid use disorder, obviously, and concurrent with that, military and first responders. So the reason for that, some people may be scratching their heads. And then after those two patient populations, I'd like to have it available for the broader population that I mentioned earlier. The reason for military and first responders is because when you think about, Paula and I were at a great event, maybe it was 3 weeks ago now, Paula, and I forget the exact name of it, so maybe you can correct me on this, but it was something called, it was basically an event where there were over 500 first responders, state police officers from Massachusetts, firefighters. Scott was there, obviously. I met him. He had a lot of great questions on the vaccine, big vaccine skeptic, and rightly so, but I think I got there with him. And so I was chatting with them in the crowd, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm all of 5'10" or 5'11", and walking up to these big hulking police officers and firefighters and saying, "Hey, I'm working on a vaccine, for fentanyl overdose. Would you consider it?" And some of the responses were very welcoming. Some of them were like, "Well, tell me more. I mean, maybe this could be something that's interesting. I come into contact with fentanyl or fentanyl derivatives relatively frequently, and it is a fear, it is an angst." But others said, "Absolutely not. The last thing I want is another vaccine." So I had to chat more with them, and it turns out when you look at what, for example, a firefighter is doing on a daily basis or a nightly basis when they run into a burning house in Western Massachusetts, for example, and they don't know what's in that house. I mean, that house could be filled with fentanyl and fentanyl precursors and analogs and methamphetamine, just all sorts of nasty stuff that in the event that the roof collapses or a wall falls over, or just even if there's obviously a fire and those substances go into the air in massive quantities, they can be inhaled, and that's scary. That is a terrifying thing for a firefighter to run into and not know what's in the air, what they're encountering. So after I explained stories like that and listened to stories like that, they started to realize, like, okay, this could be something of value. This could be something interesting for us. And then second to that, if you look at the threat of fentanyl on a mass basis, again, not to say anything poor about Narcan and naloxone, because they are fantastic. I promote those all day long. It's not competition. It's only better for what we're trying to do. When you look at that, if there were a mass casualty event that involved carfentanil, for example, there would not be enough Narcan and naloxone available fast enough to save those lives. And so I think in military situations specifically, and our chief medical officer spent 23 years in the military, so he understands this firsthand. His name is Dr. Sean Remick. For military situations specifically, if these soldiers, and if you're starting to see fentanyl weaponized, there was a Business Insider article not too long ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or a month ago, that was discussing fentanyl being weaponized in the Middle East. In those events, there's nothing. I mean, you can have all the auto injectors in the world, but still, I mean, these substances like carfentanil specifically can kill so rapidly and so quickly that we would be helpless. And so I want to have a countermeasure. I want to have a defense, really, and an armor for our soldiers, for our first responders, so that they are not operating in fear. There's no angst when they run into a burning building. And Charlie, I mean, you spent 30 years doing this, so you more than anyone can probably appreciate. It's at the end of the day, it's having that protection against the unknown. And I know there's been a lot of controversy on whether or not, this is the last piece that I'll say, on whether or not officers, first responders are actually overdosing out there. And I do not want to be a fearmonger. That's not my intention. My intention is to be real and try to speak factually as much as I can. That's not what we're going for here. We're going for the if event. If this can happen, we want to have an answer. And that's what's most important to me. And also, even if 1% of those situations, 0.5% of those situations are actual overdoses, that's too much. I don't think a first responder, I don't think any military member should ever be in a situation where they're losing their life because they're trying to save another life, because they're trying to defuse a crime scene. And so, yeah, that's what we're going for, Paula. Good question.
Is that who I hear in the background, Colin?
Can you guys hear that? Yes, it is. It's the star. I'll go on mute when you're talking. I'm sorry.
No. If she wants to join, I would love, please let her come on. We love to have.
I don't know if you want to see her in this current state. We're doing a little bit of sleep training. So yeah.
Well, that's always fun. We all went through that. Trust me.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I can't believe you can hear that. The sound quality on this is very good.
That's because I'm a mother. So remember, we hear everything.
Yeah. No, there is definitely an intuition there. But yeah, go, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think one of the biggest things, and Charlie, you had up Jack's post where he said government control is a negative part of it. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that. Jack, you're right. Unfortunately, we're seeing it. Right. I'm seeing it. I've talked about it many, many times. That's exactly what's happening is you have it, Charlie. We've talked about it just here in Massachusetts with our government officials. I mean, my God, we had a bust right in Dorchester, which is right outside of Boston, 2 weeks ago, $90,000, and you hear nothing. So yeah, sometimes that absolutely is the case. Oh, my husband said, of course I heard that, because the only time I don't hear is when he asks me to do something, because then I can't hear him.
Yeah, no, I saw that comment come in. I was laughing at that.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. And so let's talk about that, Colin. What is the momentum that you have, in putting this out? I mean, obviously you and I know Jim Carroll very well and love and adore him. And, and he freaking, I mean, he flew in for my event and flew out, and people were like, "You're here just for her?" He's like, yeah, this is what he does. So why don't you talk about the momentum you have? And if people are on here, because again, we have people listening on YouTube, here, Instagram, and if they want to say, hey, I want to help Colin, how can I do that? Is Colin accepting people to come and help, or be the champion, or is he starting a coalition, a committee? How can I do that? Because I think that's something good with what you're doing for those out there who might want to absolutely help you in this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I'll get to your first point. So I think the intersection between the private sector, and the government is one that you have to be very careful with. I do think that the next administration coming in office has the opportunity for a fresh start of sorts, and we saw obviously under Jim Carroll while he was the director of the ONDCP, we saw I think the first ever decline in overdoses while he was leading. Which he gets tremendous credit for. And by the way, on top of that, the NIH HEAL initiative that he put into place is now funding our programs.
Right.
So he is responsible actually for a lot of the research that we're now working with and taking into the clinic. So working with the government, I think overall is a positive to get this done. Frankly, I don't really care who we work with. I don't care if we're working with aliens on this. I just want a substance. I want, whether it's a pill, it's a vaccine. I want something out there available for all those who desperately need it. The fact that in the United States, 70 to 80,000 people roughly are still passing away, and being poisoned is horrible. I mean, we are leading the world in the worst way possible in terms of the poisonings and overdoses that we're experiencing. And so we need something out there. And anyone out there who wants to lend a hand, whether that's through, like I said, the best way to do it is just through word of mouth. I mean, the more you can socialize and chat with people about this, the better. But anyone who wants to lend a hand and add their expertise and intelligence to what we're working on, their perspective. By the way, I welcome every single perspective I possibly can. A lot of people are skeptical, rightly so. A lot of people have a ton of questions. Ask all the questions. I mean, I think on our website there's a general submission inbox. We read that. We're small enough. We read every message that comes in. So shoot us questions all day long. How can you help? I mean, knowledge. If there is anyone out there who wants to get financially involved, there are ways to do that. But I think a lot of the financials should frankly go to the nonprofits in the space. Especially Paula. I mean, she's doing fantastic work. We talk about it all the time. I think the intersection of athletics and what we're working on here gives a very unique approach to this being effective. I think athletics have saved a lot of my friends' lives. I mean, they've completely turned around through their devotion to sport. I was never an athlete. I was never. I never had those chops, but I was more involved in the books. But I think that's extremely valuable. So I'd encourage everyone out there. Obviously, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you're a supporter of Achieve Greatness. So revisit that. I mean, I think that's probably the best place for dollars to go right now. We'll get this done. I mean, I'm highly confident that we will. If it's not this product, it'll be the next one, or the next one, or the next one. We will see something done here. There's so much room for innovation. There's so much room for improvement. That something will happen. And I hope to be a part of it in some way. But yeah, Paula, does that answer both of those questions?
It does. Yes. And for anyone questioning, yes, Colin has graciously partnered with Achieve Greatness. So we are very humbled by this, because as we know, we have to work together, as I say all the time. Phil and I say all the time, and Charlie, we can't do this alone. We just can't. There's just the magnitude of what's happening across the United States. And, and I was at an event not too long ago where I told the people, I said, just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. Yeah. It's not going to go away. You can't put it under the rug. It's in our face. It's here. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. I mean, we had an ex-agent on not too long ago. What was it, Charlie? 3 weeks ago that we had Eric on. You're muted. Can't hear you.
Well, no.
Yes, I can hear you now. It was like 3 weeks ago, right? That we
Yeah.
had Eric on. Yeah. So Eric, just to let you know, Colin is a former agent in Homeland Security and Interpol, and he talked about how the cartels are infiltrating the cities and towns, and that now they're starting to work with the gangs. And this is just something that they're doing. And again, he's speaking from experience, right? So even though he's retired, I think it was 4 years, he's still in very, very much connections with people on the inside. And this is why Charlie and I do what we do, is because we bring people like him, like you, like others who are seeing this and who are battling it on the front lines every day, who are boots on the ground, grassroots movements. Because at the end of the day, I say this all the time, and I said this on a call I was on today, the government's they're not going to come and save us.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not. We have to work together to get the movement out and to get the momentum out and work towards saving lives.
I agree. No, I mean, it's at the end of the day, Paul, we are, for sure underdogs. We all talk about a highly stigmatized concept, and topic, like I mentioned, and I mean, there's many times, where I live, where I'll be chatting with people who ask what I do, and I'll tell them, they'll be like, "Oh, wow," and it's weird that I get that reaction versus, "Oh, wow, it's really inspirational. We should come together. We should join, and we should squash this." In the same way that you see, my mom had breast cancer growing up. We used to go to these walks, and in the same way that you see people come together in support of that and ending that illness, this, in my mind, is an illness to the United States. And hopefully, it doesn't become this way, but we're starting to see it crop up around the world now. And so we all, as individuals, need to band together as much as we possibly can. That's why I said word of mouth is the best thing you possibly do. Just tell people, talk about it more, because it's not, it shouldn't be taboo, in my opinion. This is something that, if you think about my situation, you lose 2 people in your life, and instead of going and moping about it, you do something about it, just like you, Paula. So you're rising up, you're inspired, you did something, and now you're going out there, and your son would be proud of you, is proud of you. And so that's I think the answer that we need here, is to be inspired by what's happening and come together and be strong together. So yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's a good point.
Yeah, we gotta. Excuse me, Paula. 1 second before I forget. We have a radio host on watching, and that's Anthony Black from 107 FM. He's in Los Angeles right now, and that's the thing. We got to keep spreading it out and keep spreading this news and talking about it. And Anthony is a very great DJ, and he delivers many messages throughout his program and his show. But I want to mention him because he did comment that he's in LA right now, and that's another venue, another place where we can get the message out on everything that we're all doing, and so I just wanted to mention him, and enjoy that weather out there in Los Angeles, Anthony. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Colin. So one of the things we do is we always like our guests to leave a message to everyone, kind of your closing monologue, so to speak. And then Charlie and I play a game, and the game is called He Asks Me a Football Question, which is very hysterical, since I already told you I know nothing about sports.
I was going to say, you don't know how to answer?
Yeah. So, well, sometimes I am allowed to ask a guest or someone from the audience that are in the chats. And sometimes
you're in bad company. I know nothing about football either, so I'm sorry. We're going to be lost on this.
That's all right. But what is your last words to everyone listening, your last kind of message, so people have a takeaway?
Yeah, just I'd say do not settle. Let's not be content here. with what's currently going on in the country. Let's make a change. I mean, I think there's a lot of really brilliant young people out there that have the opportunity and the interest and the inspiration in their universities and put it to use. Like found some companies. Let's get some steam behind this and let's solve this. I think there's a big opportunity to do so, and I think we're more than capable. That's the biggest thing that I would say.
Absolutely. All right, Charlie, what's my question this week?
Let's see. Let's come up with something here. Let's see. I'm trying to think here.
Okay, how about this? Who's the team that sucks in the NFL? Can I mention the ones that suck?
What, the New York Jets?
Hey, we're not going there. That's Andrew's team. Remember?
I thought it was the Giants this year. If anything.
Yeah, Giants by a long shot, huh?
Big Giants fan. He's not having a good year.
Yeah. Neither are the Patriots.
Paula, here's an easy one.
Oh, you always say they're easy, and then the last 2 weeks, everybody was cracking up because I didn't know the freaking thing about the ball.
What color is the challenge flag?
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute.
I might know this.
Okay, is that the one that they throw on the field? Is that the one that they throw? Because if it's the one that they throw, okay, Colin, what is it?
I think it's red, right?
You got it. It's red.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're thinking of the foul flag. I did play football. I was horrible at it, but at least I know the game. But I do not know the stats. I don't know the teams now. Nothing.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The challenge flag is thrown by the head coach.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Remember, Belichick used to like to keep it in his sock, and he would throw it out there, and that was the color of the challenge flag is red. And usually the penalty flag is yellow.
Is the yellow? Okay.
It's thrown by the referees.
All right. Perfect.
So, hey, have you ever heard of the butt sack?
Never.
You always have these wonderful questions for me. No, I have not heard of that. And I know you're not saying this because my butt's big, because you tell me that all the time. Like
No. The butt sack was.
Colin's turning red. Yes.
Listen, the butt sack is infamous because the New York Jets quarterback Sanchez got butt sacked. He ran into his teammate's butt and he got sacked. And that's called the butt sack. So I just wanted to give you a little New York Jets history, See, even Phil knows. See,
yeah. Well, of course, he says it after the fact. Mark Sanchez.
We like laughing at you. We like laughing.
Yeah. Oh, I know he is. He's going to be like, seriously, you need to tell Charlie to stop. How about, we need to change it up. Maybe we need to start asking. Oh, I know one that I'll always do good in is 80s music.
All right, we'll do that.
80s rock band.
I can, and actually the Anthony Black, the DJ, he's very great in trivia, but you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. We're gonna kind of switch it up. I'm gonna give you 80s music trivia at the end of each show. Okay.
Well, it's not just 80s, because it's also the 90s.
You just said 80s.
Well, that's because that was my era. Remember, because I was in 80s in the high school.
No, one or the other. All right, 80s and 90s. All right.
Why can't I do both?
Yeah, we'll do 80s
I'm
and 90s.
Gen X. Remember?
Do I have to give you multiple choices or just
Lord.
a question?
No, you just tell. No, you know what you can do? Because every time like 80s rock comes on, Phil's like, of course you're going to know this because, every white person listened to rock music. And I'm like, actually, I was listening to Portuguese music because that's what my parents were playing. So I didn't get into that era until I get to high school.
Well, coming from your family, you guys should be very diverse in a lot of music from a lot of genres. So I think you got it all covered.
Yes.
So but 80s and 90s trivia is something I'm going to do. I'm going to give you. I have hundreds and hundreds of questions, so that's going to be an easy thing. It's something I like to use on my other podcast. So this is going to be great. Great
See,
idea, Paula.
We're going to have you come on. We're going to have you come on just for the
I love
music
it.
part of it.
No, I
That's
love
it.
it.
Oh,
80s
wait.
might be lost on me a bit. 90s,
Yeah.
I'd be okay with, but
There you
Yeah.
go.
Lost.
We're gonna let you telephone call in. All right.
I'm available.
Well, now that he's a parent, and we know that no matter what time we call him, he's gonna be up anyway. So
basically,
you
yeah.
could call him anytime, and
I probably have a long night ahead of me, judging by the tears that were happening. Yeah.
Aw. Oh, we'll go give her a big hug and a kiss.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you again for coming on. We so appreciate you. Everyone, as always, thank you for being part of our weekly podcast. As you know, we always try to bring factual information to all of you and bring you information that you can take away, go talk to your friends, your family, your children. Remember, no one is immune to this, unfortunately. I'm a little tired of people continuing to tell me, not my town, not my kid. You can't even make that comment anymore. You just can't.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
So we thank you so much, Charlie. As always, next week we have Michael Fiore on. He is also another wonderful guest, 20 years in recovery. He was in addiction for 20 years, and now he's been in recovery for quite some time. And he has a tremendous story. So these are the people that we love to bring on, is so that everybody can hear, the stories out there, and that how people are sometimes in a path, but then their tragedy, their path turns into someone's triumph. That's how I always say there's always someone's stepping stone. And of course, I tell Charlie every time, Colin, just to let you know that, Charlie needs to pump it up, because I'm killing him with my guests.
No, well said. Well said. I think you nailed it.
Colin, you get 5 stars. I'm glad that you're here on the podcast, and
appreciate that, Charlie.
As far as all her invites and who she gets on the show, it's called a team. It's teamwork.
That's
right. There's no I in.
Yes, you're right.
She's such a slacker. We gotta deal with her every single week, and she brings it up. But you know what? I've been doing podcasts since 2020. I have over 400 episodes.
Season.
So you got a long way to go. You got to catch up. This is your podcast, Paula, and you haven't even reached 50 yet. So you got a long way to go. So hurry up, slacker.
Yeah. Colin, thank you so much.
Colin, it's been a pleasure.
Yes. Yeah, thank you both. I appreciate it.
I will follow you throughout the internet, and keep an eye on what you're doing, and actually steal some things that are going on with your company, and kind of post it on the Really Charlie podcast. I'll also put it on the Fentanyl Facts and Stories group site that's on Facebook.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Paul. We'll chat soon. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I appreciate you all, and God bless. And we will see you next Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care, y'all.
It's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.